Welcome to Family Justified. This story started like an accident, but wasn't. Stay with us. This story will begin now.
I woke up in a hospital bed with a crushing weight in my skull, the kind of pain that makes time lose its edges. Dried blood tugged at my hair. The ceiling lights buzzed softly, too calm for how wrong everything felt. Voices moved around me, nurses, machines, the scrape of a chart. But what I noticed most was my parents standing in the corner. They weren't watching me. They were watching the room tense, calculating like people waiting for a verdict. My name is Evelyn Harper. I'm 28 years old. 3 weeks earlier, I had moved back into my childhood home in Boulder after my divorce was finalized, and my teaching position disappeared in budget cuts. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I just needed time to breathe. I didn't realize I was walking back into a house where silence mattered more than safety. When my mother saw my eyes open, she rushed over and bent close, her breath warm against my ear. "Tell them you fell down the stairs," she whispered. "You have to. Your father's future depends on it." That was the moment everything snapped into focus. This wasn't about concern. It wasn't even about family. Somewhere between the blood on the floor and the delay before help arrived, a choice had already been made, one where my injury was inconvenient and the truth was dangerous. As the monitors beeped steadily beside me, one thought cut through the fog. If I told the truth, I would destroy the life they were trying to protect. If I stayed quiet, I would disappear in that family forever. And lying there, barely conscious, I realized something terrifying. I didn't know which loss they were more prepared for. When I moved back into my parents' house in Boulder, I told myself I deserved the discomfort. Divorce does that to you. Losing your job does that too. It rewrites your inner voice until everything sounds like a consequence you earned. I was 28, back in a room that used to be mine now, repainted in a neutral blue. My mother said felt more grown. Nothing in that house was meant to hold me. It was meant to tolerate me. Dinner the first night made that clear. My sister Maya sat across from me, scrolling on her phone, barely looking up when my mother mentioned I might stay through the summer. Her mouth twisted. "Great," she muttered. Just when I finally had the bathroom to myself, my father gave her a warning look that carried no weight. "Maya." He said it gently, like a suggestion. She didn't apologize. She never had to. Maya had always been that way. Bright when people were watching, sharp when they weren't. Growing up, she learned early that tears worked better than truth, and my parents learned early which version of events kept the peace. Mine were usually the ones that disappeared. A few days later, I came home from a job interview to find her in the kitchen with a man I recognized before he even turned around. When he did, the familiarity hit like a bruise. "Evelyn," he said, smiling. "Wow." It's been a long time. His name was Caleb. He had been my high school boyfriend, the one who cheated, the one my sister now introduced as her partner, casually, proudly, as if the past were just another thing she could take and make useful. "He teaches math at Dad's school," Maya said, looping her arm through his. "Dad's mentoring him." That night, sleep wouldn't come. The house creaked the way it always had, but now every sound felt like a reminder that I was the variable. The next evening, I went downstairs for water and saw Maya's phone light up on the counter. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But the message preview froze me in place. It referenced exam answers, certification sections, my father's access. The conversation was worse than I expected. Messages laid out a plan that felt practiced. Advanced materials, early access, a quiet arrangement that would put Caleb ahead and keep Maya aligned with my father's legacy. It wasn't just unethical, it was deliberate. For 2 days, I said nothing. I weighed what silence would cost me against what honesty would cost all of them. Then Maya came home early one afternoon and found me waiting. When I told her what I'd seen, her face changed fast. Fear, then anger, then something colder. "You're not saying anything," she said. "No one will believe you anyway." That was when I understood the real pattern. It wasn't just favoritism, it was protection. And I was never the one being protected. I didn't confront anyone right away. That surprised even me. Old habits die quietly. I moved through the house like a guest who'd overstayed, careful not to disturb the air. I listened more than I spoke. I noticed patterns. When my father lowered his voice on the phone, when my mother corrected stories before anyone asked, when Maya smiled too quickly as if rehearsed. I started keeping my phone on me at all times, screen down, locked. I wrote things down at night, nothing dramatic, just dates fragments, phrases that didn't sit right. I told myself I was being paranoid. I also knew I wasn't. Maya grew bolder once she realized I wasn't backing down. She started leaving her laptop open on the kitchen table, her notes spread out, confident I wouldn't touch them. She talked loudly on the phone when I was in the room, dropping names, reminding me who mattered here. When Caleb came over, my father treated him like a son-in-law already earned. Their conversations were full of shorthand and implication. Next step, my father would say, "Timing matters." Caleb nodded, grateful and hungry. One night, my mother cornered me in the laundry room. She folded towels with unnecessary precision. "You seem tense," she said. "Try not to read into things. It wasn't advice. It was instruction." I asked her calmly if she knew about the exam materials. Her hands stilled. "Just for a second." "Your father knows what he's doing," she said. "You don't need to carry this." What she meant was, don't make it visible. The more I watched, the clearer it became. This wasn't a lapse, it was a system, one that rewarded obedience and punished disruption. And I was the disruption. I thought about reporting it. Then I thought about my father's application, the letters of recommendation already written, the speeches rehearsed. I thought about Maya's graduation photos waiting to be taken. I thought about how easily the story could be flipped, divorced, unemployed, emotional, unstable. I'd seen it happen before, just not to me. So I stayed quiet and kept notes. The house grew tighter around that silence. Meals were shorter. Doors closed more often. When Maya finally confronted me, it wasn't explosive. It was surgical. She found me at the kitchen island one afternoon, my notebook closed in front of me. "What are you doing home?" she asked. "I thought you had an interview." "It was rescheduled," I said. She didn't sit. "You've been acting weird." "I saw your messages," I replied. I kept my voice level. "About the exams." Her expression shifted through something like calculation. "You went through my phone. It was unlocked." She laughed once sharp. "So what now? This can't continue," I said. "It's wrong." She stepped closer. "Wrong according to who? According to the rules you're planning to teach." That's when she smiled. Not kindly. "You don't get to lecture me," she said. "Look at your life." When I told her I was considering telling our parents, her tone changed. "You won't," she said. "Because if you do, I'll make sure everyone remembers how unstable you were after the divorce." She paused. "People already believe it." That was the moment the fear settled in. Not loud, heavy. The realization that she was willing to burn me down to protect what she wanted. I decided then that I would talk to my father, not accuse, not threaten, just lay it out, give him the chance to stop. I waited for the right moment because that's what I'd always done, wait, accommodate hope. That evening, the house felt brittle. Voices carried, doors shut harder than necessary. Maya passed me on the stairs without looking at me. When she reached her room, she turned sharply. "This conversation is over," she said. I followed her. Not to argue. To finish what had started. I needed him to hear it. I needed it out in the open. She grabbed her door. And the sound that followed wasn't just the door slamming, it was something giving way, something fragile shattering. And as I stepped back, instinctively raising my arms, I understood too late that quiet doesn't always mean safe. I remember the sound before I remember the pain. The door slammed hard enough to shake the hallway. The decorative glass panel above it vibrated once, then shattered. For a fraction of a second, everything froze. Then glass rained down. I lifted my arms on instinct and stepped back. My heel caught the edge of the runner. The floor vanished. Something slammed into the back of my head, sharp and final, followed by a warmth spreading too fast to stop. I heard Maya scream my name. Footsteps pounded. My mother gasped. Then my father's voice cut through it all, calm in a way that didn't belong. "Wait, just wait." That was the last thing I remember clearly. When I came to the world was white and humming. Ceiling tiles, antiseptic air, a steady beep marking time. A nurse asked my name. I answered, but it felt like someone else's voice. My parents stood at the foot of the bed. When our eyes met, relief didn't come. Fear did. My mother hurried over and leaned close. "You fell down the stairs," she whispered. "That's what happened." I tried to shake my head. Pain exploded behind my eyes. A doctor entered, introduced herself, checked the monitors. We found her at the bottom of the stairs, my father said smoothly. She tripped on the runner. It didn't make sense. We hadn't been near the stairs. When the doctor asked to examine me alone, my parents hesitated before stepping out. The room went quiet. Her tone changed. You have multiple lacerations consistent with glass fragments, she said, and a skull fracture at the back of your head. She paused. Can you tell me what you remember? The hallway, the door, the glass. My sister slammed her door, I said slowly. The glass broke. I fell backward. She nodded once. That matches your injuries. My parents returned with Maya. Her eyes were red. Her hands shook as she rushed to my side. I'm so sorry, she said. You fell. I should have warned you about the runner. The doctor excused herself, pulling my parents into the hall. When they came back, my mother sat beside me, smoothing my hair away from the bandages. You're confused, she said gently. That's normal after a head injury. You fell down the stairs, my father added. That's all you need to say. Later, a nurse adjusted my IV and lowered her voice. Are you comfortable with your family's version of events? Before I could answer, the doctor returned with scans. She pointed to bright flecks on the image. These are glass fragments, she said. Their pattern doesn't match a stair fall. She looked at me steadily. I'm required to report discrepancies like this. A social worker came the next morning. She asked if I felt safe at home. She mentioned my father had tried to access my chart. She mentioned a delay before emergency services were called. 40 minutes. I remembered his voice again. Wait. A detective arrived later that day. She sat beside my bed and asked me to tell the story in my own words. This time I didn't rush. We were arguing, I said. The glass shattered. I fell. They delayed calling for help. She wrote carefully. Your account aligns with the medical findings, she said, and it conflicts with your family's. When my parents learned the police were involved, my father stormed into the room. What have you done? He demanded. You're ruining everything. A nurse stepped between us. Your daughter needs rest, she said firmly. This conversation is over. As the door closed behind him, the room finally went still. The truth was no longer just something I remembered. It was documented, time-stamped, written down. And once the record exists, it doesn't bend for anyone. The room felt smaller after that, not because anyone was standing closer, but because there was no space left for pretending. My parents came back that evening together, measured, rehearsed. My mother sat on the edge of the chair and folded her hands like she was about to pray. My father stayed standing, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the window. We need to be aligned, my mother said softly, for the family. I waited. Silence had taught me patience. The detective will talk to everyone, my father added. You're tired. You've been through a lot. It's easy to misremember details after a concussion. I didn't misremember, I said. My voice surprised me. It didn't shake. Maya hovered near the door, avoiding my eyes. When she finally spoke, it came out rushed. I never meant for you to get hurt. You know that. I believe you, I said. But what happened after matters, too. My mother reached for my hand. I pulled it back gently. The monitor kept its steady rhythm. Outside the window, dusk settled over the parking lot, headlights flickering on one by one. If this is reported as a domestic incident, my father said, lowering his voice, it will follow all of us. My application, Maya's certification, everything we've worked for. There it was, not concern, terms. I nearly died, I said, and the first thing you did was decide what story would protect you. Maya looked up then. So you're just going to burn it all down. I shook my head. I'm not burning anything. I'm stopping. They stared at me confused. I'm stopping the lies, I said. I'm stopping the cover stories. I'm stopping the pressure to make myself smaller so everyone else looks clean. My father's jaw tightened. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being clear. I told them I wouldn't change my statement, that I wouldn't go back to the house after discharge, that any communication going forward would be in writing. No hallway conversations. No whispered instructions. This isn't punishment, I said. It's a boundary. My mother's eyes filled. You're tearing this family apart. I looked at the door, the quiet room, the packed bag at my feet, sweatpants, a charger paperwork clipped neatly together. It was already broken, I said. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. When they left, the room went still again. A nurse came in and helped me sit up. The movement hurt, but it was clean pain, honest. That night, I signed the discharge plan and arranged temporary housing. I watched my reflection in the dark window bandages, tired eyes, a steadiness I didn't recognize yet. For the first time, I wasn't negotiating my reality. I was enforcing it. The consequences didn't arrive with noise or spectacle. They came quietly through follow-up calls, written reports, and timelines that refused to bend. The hospital finalized my chart. The detective compared statements. And the story my family wanted that I'd fallen down the stairs collapsed once the scans showed what they actually had: glass fragments, impact patterns, and a delay that couldn't be explained away. I didn't celebrate any of it. I focused on healing. Physical therapy for balance. A temporary apartment arranged through the hospital so I didn't have to return to the same hallway where the glass had fallen. Nights where I slept without listening for doors or footsteps. For the first time, my body wasn't bracing for the next correction. My father was placed on administrative leave. My sister's certification review was paused. My mother stopped calling every day. When she did reach out, there were no instructions left, no version to memorize, only uncertainty. That silence hurt more than anger ever had. What I learned is this: the truth doesn't need agreement to stand. Once something is written down in medical notes, timestamps, and images, it stops being negotiable. Refusing to change my statement wasn't cruelty. It was the first boundary I'd ever enforced without apology. A year later, my life looked quieter, but stronger. I wasn't rebuilding relationships the old way. I was rebuilding myself. Choosing temporary housing after discharge wasn't dramatic, it was self-respect. Letting the process unfold wasn't revenge, it was accountability. And walking away from the need to explain myself didn't make me cold, it made me safe. I didn't fight, I documented. If you're standing between loyalty and truth, choose the truth. It may cost you relationships, but it gives you your life back. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to Family Justice Files. Your support helps us continue sharing stories about boundaries, justice, and self-respect, stories that remind people their truth is allowed to exist.